Hello again, this is Rosine. Welcome again to your Story My Inspiration podcast. I hope you are having good time because we're gonna make it better today because we are gonna fly to India. Well, I'm gonna have her introduce herself and we start from there.
Hi, my name is Archana. I am an international student who recently graduated with a Ph.D. in biomedical engineering. I'm from India, and I'm basically working on neuroscientific research where I use different kinds of engineering tools to study how the brain functions. That is a chunk of my work.
Did you guys hear that? Don't mind me if I call Dr. Archana. Okay, let me get it back to get your name right. Archana?
Yes, Archana.
Hi, Dr. Archana.
Hello. Hi, Rizzi.
Like, Dr. Archana. I'm gonna stress that out because don't blush because
You are making me blush.
I'm gonna say it loud for the people in the back. She got her doctor, like, what is your excuse, Rosine? Okay, let's get serious here. So,
Okay.
her name is Dr. Archana, and wow. Do you mind if I ask you how old you are?
I am 28 years old. You're being really kind with your reactions. I'm going to be honest.
Anywho, okay, let's start the game here. What is my lesson here? What is your lesson here? What is your excuse? What is, oh my God. High five to this. Thank you. I've been dreaming. Actually, I probably even asked you in the past about doctorate, PhD, and it's really inspiring. Let's just, there is no sugarcoating here. There is no the other way around. It takes a lot of classes. It takes a lot of a big gut. Like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna pursue my education.
Right.
Wow. Let's start again. Doctor, what are you doctoring into?
Okay. So my major has been biomedical engineering, which is a really vast field. And it primarily includes any sort of equipment or instruments or research or methods that surround hospital or the medical industry in general. It could be anything from working on different kinds of genetics, way up to different sort of like instruments such as like the ventilator or like heart monitor, something as simple as that. So it's a field that encompasses all of it. But I work in the neural engineering field, which is basically, like I said, using engineering tools to study neuroscience concepts in the hope to provide different kinds of diagnostic techniques as well as rehabilitation techniques for patients who have different sort of neurological disorders. So that is broadly kind of the field that I work in. If I were to talk a little bit more specifically, then I study how humans make decisions, how they implement those decisions, and this is what I'm doing right now in Healthy Humans. But I'm going to be soon pursuing a postdoc, and as part of that, I'm going to be studying the same mechanism and how it is impaired in, say, like schizophrenia patients or like Parkinson's patients. So it is, and the idea behind all of that is, this making decisions is really central to our functioning. So if we were to understand how those processes work, then eventually we could use that in developing more intelligent systems, but at the same time, not have those intelligent systems take over us. So that's kind of like, the general idea, but also a major chunk of the work is helping patients in different rehabilitation programs.
What did I get from that? Decision making. I, Rosine Kamugisha from Rwanda, made a decision to come up with this podcast and made a decision to invite Dr. Archana to come inspire all of us because Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I don't have Ph.D. Maybe in the future, my grandkids will go for that. I'm not sure. I still would love to, but it's not easy. Maybe at some point I will think about that because I don't feel like so old right now that I wouldn't go for PhD. It's just because the field of study I went for, it might take another 4 years that I feel like I would making money, dollars. But the point, she's doing a great job. And since I've known her, it's experiment after experiment. Can you imagine if like somebody knows how your machine works? Like, why do you do what you're doing? And that's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we know a very small percentage of it. If I were to, and I think that is what is humbling also about generally being in this research field, because you go in saying, no, we know a lot of things, and then you actually start doing the research and you're like, no, it's a really tiny portion. But even knowing that tiny portion does contribute eventually, towards helping people. So, well, that is how it is.
Dr. Archana, I'm gonna be calling you so because
thank you. That
earned it.
It's really kind of you to do that, because I don't. Everybody pretty much just calls you a doctor for like maybe like the first 2 days or whatever, and then everybody's, and also like being in academia, you're always surrounded by those people. So almost everybody there is a doctor. So sometimes I feel it's very. It almost feels like your accomplishment is you don't see the magnitude of that accomplishment, but I love the fact that you're making me feel the magnitude of that accomplishment. I think that's really sweet of you, and I think that's really important because being immigrants, like we leave a lot of stuff back home, like our family, our comfort space in general, and come to different countries, and in the hope of getting different kinds of experiences. And then having people who actually celebrate, you having those experiences or achievements, I think is pretty huge. So yeah, I love that.
Well, Dr. Archana, let me tell you something. This is a country where education really have a high importance, because if you are a doctor, you are a doctor. Nobody's gonna take away, like that's how you should be addressed. And I really I don't like to use like the phrase I don't care that I'm your friend, that I'm calling you a doctor, but I'm gonna say even if we are friends, I still like wanna make sure that DR is right there, because you earned it. And that's how in a professional workspace in US, that's how it works. Titles matter. Titles, unfortunately for master's degree, I don't know if it's really I wish there was, because I would be happy to be recognized as somebody who did grad school. But for doctorate, PhD thing, I really respect that. So that's why I've been addressing you like Dr. Archana, because I know how much it takes, like classes, experiments and stuff. So you deserve it. You earned it.
Thank you.
Speaking of being an immigrant and being an accomplished person, you are on your way up there. It's not like you're looking back, and you are so young. You have a whole life in front of you. What really inspired you to go for higher education, even if it was not that easy, but you made that decision, like you are an international student. This is abroad where things are really not easy, but you still pursued to this point.
So I think I have been really privileged and fortunate to be part of a family which has primarily been composed of professors, teachers, and I mean right from like school teachers up to like university professors. Like if my dad's side of the family is primarily like that's the predominant occupation, and my mom's actually a doctor. So that was kind of I mean education as a concept was really pushed hard because they were like the idea of like gaining knowledge, gaining experience, gaining skills was something that and it was almost taught to us like your work is worship. actually. We were never, even though there were certain kinds of religious influences within the family, to a very large extent, we were taught to be very sincere towards our work and towards learning and just bettering ourselves as individuals. That was how we were seen. So that is what pushed me to go, towards higher education. But yeah, so my father's actually a professor, and now he's like an emeritus scientist. But my mom is a doctor, so I kind of wanted to combine both of those in the sense that I do want to be a professor, and I wanted to do something related to healthcare. So that is kind of how being in, working with, neurological, like patients with neurological disorders, but doing like the research aspect of it, I could be in academia and also help in the healthcare industry. So that was kind of the idea of pursuing the degree that I pursued in particular. But also, I think throughout my undergrad, I realized that I was fairly good at teaching other people concepts. It came a little bit more naturally to me, even though, I'm obviously not perfect at it, but a lot of people have given me the feedback that whenever I teach them something, I do simplify it fairly easily. So I'm like, might as well put those skills to good use and try and make a career out of it. So, and if you have to be like a university professor, kind of the stepping stone does become a PhD. So that was what got me into it. But if I were to be honest, now looking back, I think my PhD itself shaped my whole personality. It brought a lot of patience in me. It brought me the ability to make decisions in circumstances where a lot of things were not under my control. It just taught me a lot more acceptance, to be honest. Like, some things are just beyond your control, or sometimes you just don't expect certain things and you have to kind of, adapt and, make the most out of that situation. So it taught me a lot of life skills in general. So a lot of people, tend to view education as, it's, if you want to make a certain kind of career, that's just the route that you go by. But I feel like education actually shapes you as an individual and your personality. And even though it was a difficult journey, if someone told me, it's going to shape you to be this individual, would you go through it again? 100% yes. So yeah, that's basically my answer of why I did what I did. But now I have a whole new perspective on what more it added through my journey.
Well, dear friends, you can hear and you can learn from here, because one of the things that I just picked up from what you said, of course, inspiration, family support, parents. Ooh, can I be adopted in a family of professors and doctors? Anyways, one of the motivation, family support, and I'm grateful for my family too, because if it wasn't their motivation, I remember first days when I moved to the US, I was talking to mom, obviously, over the calls, and she would be like, when are you going to school? That was the question. Not only I went because, of course, I wanted to better myself, but I wanted to be able to talk to my mom at some point and say, hey, actually, I'm going to school, and I'm doing education, because she really wanted me to pursue higher education. She even wanted to pay for that when I was back home, but I knew that it wasn't gonna be easy, because in my home country, it was not really that affordable, but she was willing to put her finances in my education. So going to school was like honoring her, but I knew, as you said, education shapes us in so many ways. Not only education is equal to money, which is a mentality that we have, and that sometimes can be disappointing, because if you go to school just to have good money, then you may be wrong at some point, because not all education equal money means money. Here, let's say that we were talking earlier before this conversation here on camera, that when you are educated, it opens up to so many things, including have a community, because you have a class and that class has people, and those are people that you didn't grow up with, and you have to learn how to get along with those people. You have a class project, you have partners, like peers, like work together on a project and assignments, and that's how it shapes so many personalities, because we didn't grow up together. You have your personality, I have mine, but we have to get along on the same table and do the assignment and submit it and have a good grade. Of course, I'm not gonna talk about details where Rosine can be a little lazy behind and you are so active and like, but that's what make us like life. Like I don't have a specific skill, you have that. When we come together, I have another specific skill, then we do a great job. So education is not always equal money, but it opens so many doors. You don't know who you're gonna meet there. Last podcast, it was probably an audio, it wasn't yet a video, but I gave a shout out to Lauren Rafev. She's my friend because she helped me working through some of the anxiety and you know, my first days. She's from Indiana, so I'm doing another shout out. That's how I make connections, because somebody says, hey Rosine, I really understand that you are in a new country, but I'm here to help you if you need, because she knew that English was my second language and I was struggling and stuff. So you made connection, you met people, and that shaped you in so many ways. And it's not about learning only like intellect part, it's other stuff too. So next question is, so how was the journey? How was, like, can you tell us, expand a little bit your experience? Of course, difficulties, how you overcame. Like, how would you tell somebody who want to go to school here from Africa, from anywhere in this world?
I think to start off with I'll kind of start, you know, way before you even come here, which is basically the application process, where you will have to, you know, end up taking certain exams that you need to score on, which is particularly the GRE and the IELTS, and there are a couple of different exams. So, and then basically you also need to have, if you're coming here for grad school, then you have to have completed your undergraduate education, right? So you will need like your certificate from there, and so once you put all of these things together, then you can, each university pretty much has their own application process and different kinds of programs. So I actually started off kind of just researching what are the different kinds of programs that I wanted to get into, and I would suggest that if it is something that interests you, then you need to, you know, take some time out. You need a couple of months to kind of just first understand the options that are out there, and then kind of research through them and then make your decision. So yeah, it starts off with that process, and then you apply to the different schools. You have to usually write, you know, something called as a statement of purpose, which basically is this one-ish page document, which basically tells about, you know, what your intent is through grad school. Like, why do you want to join grad school? That is something you need to know first. For some people, it's about gaining experience. For some people, it's gaining skills. Some people, you know, maybe they start off with a certain major and they want to switch majors to a different thing. So they want to learn something new. So it is just describing your intent.
How do you call it? Sorry to interrupt you. How do you call it again? I'm trying to remember.
Statement of purpose.
Statement of purpose, where you describe why do you want to join that specific major.
Yeah, and how you're going to actually contribute to that particular university, and how the university can actually help in contributing through your journey. So it's both ways. It's kind of, because a lot about, you know, grad school, or in general even job search for that matter, is you know, is trying to establish that what do you call that the common ground. You need to, it has to work for them, and it has to work for you as well. So it is just trying to establish that conversation on what mutually works. So yeah, which is why many people, when sometimes they get rejected from grad school, they're just like, oh my God, like this is such a big deal, like I got rejected. No, it's just that it doesn't mean that it wasn't. It just means that it wasn't for you, right? It does not mean anything else. Like it's not a fit for you. So you apply for a couple of different schools, and then after that, once you get into the program, then it depends. If you are if it is someone who's just trying to finish just a master's degree, that is what I started off with, you need to do a couple of courses first, and then you could also volunteer in different research labs if you're interested in research, and that's kind of how I started too. So I had identified a professor that I wanted to work with, and I basically approached him saying I wanted to volunteer in your lab. And then I went up to him, had a meeting, we had a conversation on what project that I could work on, and then I just happened to start working. So I joined ASU on August of 2018, and I started working in a lab around towards the end of September. And then eventually I knew that I wanted to do research and eventually pursue a PhD, but I wasn't fully sure in what kind of project I wanted to pick up. And I didn't want to go completely blind, which is why I did something called as a master's thesis, where basically you do a shorter research project for about a year or so. And through that I was able to identify the current project that I'm working on, and it turned out to be a much larger project. So the same master's thesis project I started off with could be expanded into a PhD project.
Nice.
So I got extremely lucky there, to be very honest. It does not always work like that. Many times people have to finish one project and look for another idea.
Brand new idea?
Yeah, brand new idea. And some people, and also luckily, again, I was extremely lucky that my professor at the time had funding for a PhD student. So I was able to join for PhD immediately after my master's and then continue on to the same project. That did save me a little bit of time, otherwise, and typically what people end up doing is they have a master's degree or a master's thesis, and then they switch schools sometimes based on the funding opportunity, who they want to work with, what is the project they're interested in. There are many different routes that you can go about it. Some people, even who have very clear vision or who are fairly confident that they want to do a PhD, enter the program as soon as their undergrad is over. So you don't need a master's actually.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't need a master's to get into the PhD program. You just need to have finished your undergrad. So
I wish I knew.
No, but the advantage of actually doing a master's is many times if you are continuing in the same major, the credits from your master's, since it's grad school level credits, they get transferred towards your PhD. So what ends up happening, which was the same in my case, was I didn't have to do as much coursework in my PhD because I'd done all of that coursework as part of my master's, and they just transferred those credits.
Nice.
So usually people have to do 2 years of coursework with PhD, and then the majority of the time they're just doing their research project. But I did
hang on, because I want to understand details which probably somebody else would need to understand. So I did 2 years for master's degree. From there, I could, let's say that I'm Dr. Archana right now. I'm not gonna be in communications. It might be different in communications, but I'm doing neuro, whatever you did. I can't even pronounce it correctly. If I had my 2 years master's degree, I would go straight to PhD and have some credits from my master's degree transferred to PhD, and I would only do 2 years of PhD. Or
okay, so how that works is usually that depends on the. So PhD actually does not have a set number of years.
I was gonna ask how long
it highly depends on what kind of project that you're working in, which field you're working in. Depends on your supervisor on what is the timeline you have discussed. So typically PhDs take anywhere between 4 to 6 years. That is usually the timeline.
Okay, yeah.
And sometimes, but according to if you see kind of on your the I-20, which is your immigration document, they usually give you 10 years to be able to do your PhD. So I think the limit, I believe, is 10 years. I could be wrong. But that is also, I guess, I don't know if that's particular to ASU, the school that I went to, or is it nationwide? I don't know. So that is something you need to verify. What is the maximum time limit you have to do a PhD? But typically a PhD is somewhere between 4 to 6 years.
4 to 6 years.
4 to 6 years. And that is a timeline you have to discuss with your professor, your committee members, and you also have to have finished the requirement by the end of it. So if I were to talk only about the PhD process, now first let me clarify in terms of the transfer of credits. So if you have done your master's in a particular school and you're enrolling for PhD in a different school, there needs to be an agreement between the universities for the transfer of credits to happen. So that is not a given. That is highly dependent on
the two universities
that are there.
Like you can transfer your credits, so you don't have to start over again because you have that knowledge already.
Right. So that highly. But if you're continuing in the same school like I did my master's and PhD in the same school. The transfer there does not have to be that agreement across universities. So it's just within the same department, especially if you're pursuing the same major. Then in that case, the transfer of credits can happen. The other case where the transfer of credits will not happen is if you have different majors. So it has to meet the requirements of whichever degree that you're enrolling for. So if you're within the same major, within the same school, it usually goes much more easier in terms of transfer of credits. But that does not necessarily hold true, and that is something you need to discuss with your academic advisor if that is something that you're interested in doing. So once you enroll into the PhD program, typically the first 2 years is coursework. Now,
first 2 years coursework.
Yes, coursework. So usually since I had a master's thesis from the same school, I had to do only 1 year of coursework as opposed to 2 years. Nice. That is typically the case. After your majority of your coursework is complete. Now, also this curriculum that I'm talking about is specific to ASU. Each university has its own curriculum, and when you're applying for the degree, everything is usually highlighted on their websites. There are PhD handbooks, which is kind of manuals.
Reading helps. Read the requirements on their website to know what the rights you have, especially when it comes to transferring your credits. Because if you have knowledge about something, you don't want to do it over again. So read really well when you're doing your research. We'll probably do a recap after this conversation because we are almost getting a little bit over time, but research first and know what you want before anything else. And of course you talk to your advisor and stuff, but reading terms and conditions of whatever the university you're going to is really so important. So my next question is gonna be funding wise, for somebody who want to do that, where are they going to be able to get the funds?
So there are different kinds of ways in which you can get funded. I'm going to talk about primarily the 3 ways. There are certain scholarship programs that you can apply. Sometimes you have to apply them separately with your PhD application, and some of them are included with your PhD application. That is something, again, you need to find out. There are definitely scholarship programs like the Fulbright Scholarship, and basically if you just Google, there would be a bunch of links that would appear. And usually the deadlines for the scholarship are a couple of months or weeks before the PhD application deadline, so you want to start a little bit more in advance. So that is one way in which you can get funded. A second way is your professor actually has a research grant, and they employ you on the research grant as a research assistant, and that usually gives you tuition waiver, health insurance, and a couple of different things, along with a stipend, a PhD stipend. Sometimes in certain cases, unfortunately, the funding might run out, maybe after 3 years or after 2 years. In that case, many times the department supports the students, and they usually give something called as a teaching assistantship, where you have to assist a professor in teaching classes and grading and designing lectures and assignments for them, and you basically get a stipend and a tuition waiver as a result of that. So these are 3 major ways in which you get funded. I'm sure there are other ways in which it happens to you. There are kind of these joint organizations between universities and industry, like companies, and they do fund students as well. So there are many different ways in which you can get funded. And usually the PhD programs require that you have some sort of funding, and I'm not aware of programs where where you can get admission without having funding or even continue pursuing the degree.
So
if
you
lose
first
funding.
find funding before even you get registered to the university, or you can register and then keep.
That depends. That depends on the process. In a lot of the cases, if you get admitted into the university, the university works with you with you and your professor to establish funding. But sometimes what happens is if you're like 1 or 2 years into the program, and there has been certain unfortunate cases where the funding runs out, the department is not able to support the student, and if they haven't, there are different milestones that you have to hit in a PhD. So if you haven't hit enough milestones, you unfortunately you have to exit the program. So there you have to be very mindful of the milestones that are set according to the guidelines based on the university, and the more milestones you have hit, the more odds that you will actually get your PhD.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Archana. I know this might sound like crazy or a lot of stuff or a lot of information to take in right now, but the point is, one of the points I got from like how to get funded, your education funded in a PhD, is one of them, either you do research regarding fundings like scholarship, which I didn't get like the chance to get. Like I'm really not that good at searching, but I know that sometimes you land in a good link and it takes you straight to the website where they say, because there are so many scholarship, actually I have to admit, like can be minority, can be women,
yeah, for sure,
scholarship, it can be immigrant scholarship. There's so many out there, but it gotta, it takes courage to follow through. You want to be educated, you want PhD, then sit down and do your research. That's how I would say, and read it through. Another reminder that she just brought up is sometimes you sit down with your supervisor, with your school, and they tell you like you can do some classes, you can help them, assist them, and that waive some of your fees off. Like if I'm helping them and teach some classes, then I would have access to do some classes and pay less money, or I don't have to pay the money if I'm doing a great job with assisting them. And not to take the whole time, I'm gonna have to wrap up this episode, but if you have any further questions, I'm not saying that I have all the answers for you, but I would reach out to her, I would do more research and bring up with answers. But please, if you wanna further your education, if you wanna get a PhD, master's degree, whatever it is, it's possible. She's only 28 and she's a doctor. And what is your excuse there? None. So thank you, Dr. Archana, so much, and I wish you the best. I know it's a long path, you graduated it already, but you still have stuff to do, but you've been doing great, and thank you for bringing this all inside an intellect room mood here. I do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and all the best for all the future episodes of this podcast. I think you're doing an amazing job, spreading this sort of information, especially for immigrants, and just making them feel like someone is there to help them out, right? I think that itself is really huge. I think you're really kind with your words. It's very sweet of you, and I'm really glad I got this opportunity to chat with you and that we could share this information with everybody.
I'm not getting emotional here, but yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Archana, and you watching this, you got this. Nobody said that was gonna be easy and smooth, blah blah blah. Nope, because it's a challenge, it's life, but just remember to take care of yourself. Remember that the more you have a purpose in your life, the better, So breathe in, out, and just be yourself and be better. That's all I can say. All right, see you to the next episode. I hope you're doing great, and I hope you take care of yourself. Bye.